The heavy wooden door slammed open with a sharp thud. A man's voice followed, cold and contemptuous. "Get on your knees. Clean it properly. People like you always miss the corners." The air in the executive floor restroom of Summit Dynamics froze in place, the smell of disinfectant mingling with expensive wood polish, reflecting the harsh white light on the tiled walls. The woman in the dark suit stood motionless before the sink, her deep brown eyes trembling slightly. Olivia Grant, 44 years old, had just landed from New York that morning. She hadn't even removed her temporary staff badge or had the chance to say who she was. Across from her stood Bradley Brad Whitaker, 53 Chief Operating Officer, towering with authority. The top button of his shirt was undone, his tie loose, his gaze heavy with entitlement. He looked at Olivia the way one might look at a stain on the floor, worthless something to be scrubbed away. "The restroom here is disgusting," Brad said, tossing the mop toward her. "This company pays for cleaning services, not for scenes like this. Get it done. The new CEO is coming today. Everything needs to be perfect." Olivia gripped the mop handle tightly, the sharp scent of chemicals filling her lungs. She didn't say a word. Her face remained calm, but inside a quiet fire of anger began to rise, one that had been burning, buried for years. Brad glanced at his watch, clicked his tongue, and walked out. When the sound of his footsteps faded, Olivia set the mop aside and picked up her phone. "Ethan, it's me, Olivia. Move the board meeting to 4 o'clock. I have a personal matter to handle first." She ended the call, then slowly took out her CEO badge from her bag and placed it next to the bottle of floor cleaner, a silent vow. Today she would see the true face of the company she had just acquired. 3 minutes later, Olivia stepped out of the restroom and walked down the wide corridor, lined with deep navy carpet. Abstract paintings covered the walls, and glass panels revealed the sunlit heart of downtown Austin. Yet inside, the air was icy cold. She observed carefully. Groups of employees sat in the pantry during lunch, clearly divided. The white executives laughed loudly, while the diverse tech teams ate quietly in the far corner. When doors opened, younger employees of color stepped aside. No one held the door for them. The smallest details she thought were the DNA of a company's culture. Brad had no idea that the woman he had just humiliated was the new owner of Summit Dynamics, one of the fastest-growing tech firms in the southern United States. She had outbid 12 competitors in the acquisition deal. She wasn't here for revenge. She was here to understand why a company with strong profits was dying slowly from within. On the 3rd floor, Karen Doyle, Vice President of Human Resources, had just left a meeting. The sharp click of her heels echoed on the marble floor. Spotting Olivia near the directory board, Karen frowned. "Are you the new janitor? You're not allowed on the executive floor without permission. The restroom was disgusting yesterday. Do your job properly." Olivia smiled faintly. "I'm just getting familiar with the building." Karen rolled her eyes. "I don't need you familiar. I need you to clean. And if you happen to meet the new CEO, pray, it's not another diversity hire. Those people just make everything messy." She walked away, leaving behind an air so cold it could suffocate. Olivia watched her go, her calm eyes now filled with thought. This was the root. Not overt cruelty, but contempt that had been institutionalized. At noon, Olivia stood in the women's restroom, checking every corner. Everything was spotless. There were no dirty spots, as Brad had claimed. She opened her notes and typed, "False narrative used for blame. Power structure built on humiliation." Suddenly the door swung open. Brad entered with 3 men in dark blue suits, All four stopped, their faces filled with surprise and annoyance. "What are you doing here?" Brad barked. "This area is for executives." "Inspecting the facilities," Sir Olivia replied softly. Brad glanced at the clients and smirked. Hard to find good help these days. She needs constant supervision. The client said nothing. An older man nodded. The youngest one turned away, embarrassed. Brad opened the supply closet, grabbed a mop and a bottle of cleaner, and shoved them into Olivia's hands. "Since you're here, finish the job. Especially that last stall, make sure it's spotless." He turned back to his guests. "Let's continue our discussion in the executive lounge. She can work while we talk." When the door closed, Olivia remained still, her hands clutching the cleaning tools. The sting of humiliation cut like a cold blade against her skin, but deep inside she wasn't broken. She remembered her first day on the job 20 years ago, when a male colleague told her secretaries shouldn't speak in meetings. She had stayed silent that day, but swore she would never bow her head again. Olivia bent down and began scrubbing the already shining toilet. Each movement matched a deep breath, each breath a test of patience. Beyond the door, Brad's voice carried through. "We'll need a plan in case the new CEO turns out to be someone unsuitable. I don't want anyone coming in here and ruining our culture." Olivia chuckled quietly. She set her phone on the sink, pressed record, and whispered, "Thank you, Brad. You just helped me start the reform." 15 minutes later, as the meeting sounds outside faded, Olivia lifted her head and looked into the mirror. The reflection of a middle-aged woman stared back, calm, restrained, but unyielding. The slender shoulders now seemed to bear the weight of an entire world's injustice. Yet in those eyes burned something stronger than power, the belief that justice doesn't need to shout to silence a room. She washed her hands, fixed her hair, and gave herself a faint smile. In that silence, a decision carved itself deep within her. I won't retaliate, I will rebuild. The door closed behind her. The hallway filled once again with the sound of footsteps. Each click of Olivia's heels against the marble floor sounded like a countdown to the storm about to sweep through Summit Dynamics, where they had just taught her her place, not knowing she was the one who would decide theirs. The noise of the elevator echoed like metal swallowing every thought. Olivia stepped into the cabin, the light reflecting off her unusually calm face. She had just left the restroom where she was humiliated, but on her phone screen, the board meeting still showed the start time as 2 in the afternoon. She opened her contacts and dialed a familiar number. Ethan moved the meeting to 4 o'clock. "I need to take care of something personal." The young man's voice on the other end sounded hesitant. "Yes, but the advisors are. Just move it." Olivia interrupted her tone, not raised but sharp as steel. "And Ethan, don't tell anyone why." The moment she hung up, her calm expression broke in silence. A long breath escaped her lips, heavy but not weak. She reached into her jacket pocket and took out her CEO badge. The metallic plate engraved with the words, "Olivia Grant, Chief Executive Officer, Summit Dynamics," gleamed under the light. She slipped it into her wallet, tucking it away as if hiding her identity. Today she was not here as someone who gives orders, but as someone who must understand the foundation she would soon have to tear down and rebuild. Summit Dynamics had once been a shining jewel of Austin's tech world, a 20-year-old empire famous for its enterprise intelligence software. But behind the profit reports and the glowing media coverage stood a moldy wall of bias and old power. Olivia knew it well. When the audit team sent their internal review, she had read every line: clear hierarchical culture, turnover rate for employees of color, 3 times higher. No women in executive leadership for 7 years. She knew, yet she still wanted to see it for herself. Because numbers never tell the whole story, only people do. The elevator stopped at the main lobby. Olivia stepped out, the cold air brushing against her face. The headquarters lobby stretched wide and tall with ceilings more than 10 meters high. Light streamed through the glass walls, illuminating the company's slogan, "Innovation through tradition." Innovation through tradition. A phrase that sounded proud, yet faintly ironic. At the reception desk, 2 employees were chatting. A young white man leaned casually against the counter, his white shirt crisp, his tie perfectly aligned. He glanced at Olivia, confusion flickering briefly in his eyes. "Can I help you?" he asked, his tone polite but hollow. "Just looking around the building," she replied softly. He nodded, turned back to his co-worker and whispered with a grin. Olivia caught half the sentence. "They're hiring so many service workers lately." She didn't turn around, only smiled faintly. "Thank you for the introduction to your company culture, young man." Olivia walked into the open workspace. No one paid attention to her, or rather they looked, but did not see. She stopped near the security desk. A middle-aged man in a grey shirt was scolding a younger employee. Marcus stopped chatting with visitors, eyes on the monitors. The tone reminded Olivia of countless meetings from her middle management days, where every mistake was always blamed on the people below. She approached. "Excuse me, could you tell me where the janitorial break room is?" The man, his name tag read, Richard Dean. Head of Internal Security looked up. "Who are you?" "The new cleaning staff." He gave her a long look from head to toe, his eyes skeptical. "You don't really look like someone for that job." Olivia smiled. "I just want to do my job well." "Sub-level B2, Richard said impatiently. "And remember, don't wander around. The new CEO's arriving soon. Nobody wants to see cleaning staff on the executive floor." Olivia nodded, thanked him, and walked away. As she did, she heard him mutter under his breath, "This company keeps lowering its standards." The elevator descended to the B2 level, and the atmosphere shifted entirely. The employee floor was dimmer, the walls stained, the lights flickering weakly. She saw several people in blue uniforms sitting on benches. When Olivia walked in, every gaze turned toward her, mixed with caution and fatigue. A middle-aged Latina woman stood up and offered her hand. "You knew I'm Maria Alvarez, supervisor down here." "Yes," Olivia nodded. "I just started today." Maria smiled lightly, but her eyes held a guarded weariness that came from habit. "If anyone upstairs tells you to do something, just do it." "They're particular?" Olivia asked quietly. "Are they always like that?" Maria looked around, lowered her voice. "Worse. They think we're invisible. Last week, someone got a complaint for wearing her natural hair. HR said it wasn't professional." Can you believe that Olivia didn't answer? She just nodded slightly, imprinting it in her memory. A notification popped up on her phone from Ethan Brooks. "Meeting moved. Some board members asked why. I told them you're conducting an internal survey. They're guessing you want to evaluate company culture. No one suspects you're being humiliated in the basement." Olivia smiled faintly. "Good. Just as I need." She opened her notes and typed, "Company divided by hierarchy. Janitorial staff basement, administrative staff middle floors, executives glass offices, architectural structure mirrors mindset." 2:00 in the afternoon. On the top floor, Brad Whitaker paced around the conference room, rehearsing his welcoming speech for the new CEO. He believed today would be his chance to impress and secure his position before the new investor arrived. In the same building, The woman he had humiliated that morning stood deep in the basement, listening to the hum of vacuum cleaners, the low chatter of workers, and seeing what no financial report ever revealed. Summit wasn't breaking in its numbers. It was cracking at its soul. When Olivia returned to the elevator, she looked at her reflection in the mirrored walls, a shirt damp with sweat hair, slightly disheveled face, marked with fatigue from a morning spent among the lowest floors. She didn't see a powerful CEO. She saw the 22-year-old girl who had once been mistaken for the coffee assistant in her first meeting. The elevator doors opened to the 12th floor, the executive level. Bright lights, expensive perfume, marble floors gleaming with reflections. Olivia stepped out, blending into the crowd, hurrying to prepare for the arrival of the new CEO. No one realized she was the person they were about to greet. In her mind, Brad's voice, Karen's tone, the receptionist's glance, Maria's story all blended into a discordant symphony of prejudice. And through that noise, one rhythm stood out, the rhythm of resolve. She opened her phone and sent a message to Ethan. Prepare for the 4 o'clock meeting. But before that, I want to see how they treat the new CEO when they think I'm still the cleaning lady. The message was sent. Olivia lifted her head and walked toward the main hallway. The executive room doors were slightly open, light spilling out to embrace her. Before stepping in, she whispered to herself, this time she wouldn't just lead a company. She would change how the world measures human worth. The glass doors opened, and Olivia stepped into another world, brighter, louder, yet suffocatingly cold. The executive floor of Summit Dynamics was like a giant crystal box, every detail arranged with surgical precision, from the glass walls overlooking Town Lake to the Italian leather chairs positioned with millimeter perfection. But beneath that perfection lingered something hollow, like an expensive mask hiding a decaying face. Olivia walked slowly, her eyes scanning every detail like a director's camera. A group of senior employees gathered near the coffee bar, their laughter light but laced with arrogance. The development department's hiring again, probably more of those curly-haired guys. The group burst out laughing. A young assistant forced a small laugh, then turned away, her eyes clouded. In another corner, 2 men discussed folders. When a young black employee walked past, they immediately fell silent. As soon as he disappeared around the corner, one of them murmured, "He seems smart, but he doesn't really fit our culture." The other nodded firmly. Summit has its own standards. Let's not let all this diversity nonsense ruin it. Olivia didn't speak. She stood by the espresso machine, holding a paper cup, her expression calm, but her eyes sharp as blades. Every word, every glance she recorded, not just with her phone, but with the mind of someone who had spent 20 years walking through corridors of power. Human resources, the place where small-minded authority disguised itself as policy. Olivia entered just as the click of high heels echoed across the tiles. Karen Doyle, Vice President of Human Resources, emerged from an office in the corner. She was the embodiment of old-school corporate control. Blonde curls, perfectly arranged, a thin smile stretched across her lips and eyes that assessed everyone like she was deciding who belonged in her space. "Who are you?" Karen asked, her irritation barely hidden. "Cleaning staff," Olivia replied evenly. Karen crossed her arms, raising an eyebrow. "Good. This floor is a mess. I don't understand how the company keeps paying people like you to do half a job." Olivia glanced up at the faded poster on the wall. Equality and anti-discrimination policy. The paper was yellowed, a corner torn, and the last update was 3 years ago. "We'll do our best to improve," she said softly. Karen sighed. "I hope so. The new boss is arriving soon. And if it's another one of those diversity hires, well, let's just hope it's someone competent this time. Olivia smiled a smile filled with both sadness and contempt. A company that prides itself on innovation, yet its HR department is still living in 1950. When Karen walked away, Olivia opened her phone and typed a note. HR equals the fortress of conservative power. Recruitment and evaluation processes deeply biased. Change must begin at the gateway to people. She moved toward the executive pantry. No one paid her attention, but the air subtly shifted when she entered. Conversations paused. A young white man in a crisp shirt and polished shoes spoke quietly. "Please don't touch that coffee machine. It costs more than your monthly salary." Olivia stopped, looked at him with such composed calm that he faltered. "Thank you. I just need a cup before I continue cleaning up." Summit. She pressed the button. The machine whirred loudly, its mechanical rhythm cutting through the silence like a heartbeat. A young employee stepped forward, speaking softly. "Ma'am, if you need extra cloths, there are more in the cabinet." His eyes held a trace of empathy, not pity, but understanding. Olivia nodded gently. "Thank you, that's very kind of you." For a fleeting moment, she felt the faint pulse of warmth that still survived within this cold system. Then she turned away, walking back into the main hallway. Portraits of the executive board lined the wall rows of middle-aged white men. Not a single woman. Not a single person of color. No sign of diversity beyond varying hairstyles. Beneath each frame gleamed a brass plaque, engraved with the words integrity, leadership, tradition. Olivia murmured under her breath. Tradition indeed. Near the end of the corridor, she spotted Brad Whitaker standing with 3 men in grey suits. They were laughing, their eyes occasionally flicking toward her. Brad leaned in, speaking just loudly enough for her to hear. God, they really hire people dressed like that to clean the executive floor. The group burst into laughter. One added, "I thought this area was off limits to outsiders." Olivia kept her back straight, walking past them. Each step stitched the wounds tighter, turning them into new armor. In the room next door, Richard Dean, the head of security, was briefing a new hire on the rules for interacting with leadership. Don't make eye contact with them. Don't speak unless spoken to. Never enter the executive lounge without supervision. Olivia stood silently by the doorway listening. A 21st century company operating with the rules of an 18th century estate. She left the administrative wing and walked along the glass corridor leading to the balcony. The afternoon sun poured in, reflecting off the skyscrapers of Austin in the distance, where hundreds of young startups were changing the world, while Summit remained trapped in its own arrogance. She took out her phone and opened the goals list she had written at the start of the acquisition. Build a transparent, multi-level leadership model. Eliminate class-based management structures. Establish a culture of two-way feedback. Replace tradition with transformation. Those words were no longer theory on paper. They were orders, non-negotiable. Olivia turned back and stood in the center of the executive lobby. From there she could see the entire power map, senior directors, gathered in their private lounge assistants, waiting outside the doors, cleaning staff mopping the floor, while no one saw them as human. In that moment, she realized she was witnessing a miniature society where hierarchy was carved into the architecture and respect existed only where the light could reach. Summit Dynamics didn't just have a management problem. It had a problem with how it valued human dignity. She took out her phone and wrote her final note of the day. When power is built on prejudice, everything collapses from within. No external enemy needed. I'll let them reveal themselves, then I'll strike. She pocketed her phone and took a deep breath. The intercom chimed. All employees, please, gather in the 12th floor lobby to welcome the new CEO in 5 minutes. Olivia's lips curved slightly. The new CEO, she whispered. They were about to welcome the very person they had just disdained. She turned and stepped into the elevator, her hand still gripping her notebook. In the reflection of the steel doors, her eyes gleamed with both weariness and unwavering resolve. A storm was forming, not one of rage, but of clarity, sharp and unstoppable. Tomorrow, the world of Summit Dynamics would never be the same again. The sharp cadence of expensive leather shoes striking marble sounded like the drumbeat of power. Outside the executive conference room, Brad Whitaker was greeting 3 guests from a partner conglomerate, wearing the confident smile of a man who believes he understands the order of the world, who commands, and who was born to obey. While the 3 men joked, Olivia emerged from a side corridor, holding a rag and a bottle of cleanser, the props Brad had shoved into her hands that morning. She meant to pass quickly, but Brad saw her. His gaze seized on her, as if a perfect chance to perform his status had just fallen from the sky. "Wait," he said, his voice raised and clear for the guests to hear you there. The entire lobby turned. Olivia stopped. "Come here. The restroom in back was just used, and I won't have our guests deal with that. Clean it." His tone was dry, stripped of even basic courtesy. The oldest guest offered a strained smile. "No need. Brad, really, we can." "It's fine." Brad cut in. "My company maintains very high standards. No one wants filth around them, right?" He turned to Olivia. "Did you hear me clearly? I want spotless, not a single smudge left. And remember the corners. People like you always miss them." The air went still. Those words, "people like you," dropped like a stone into a still lake, sending rings of discomfort through the guests' eyes. Olivia didn't answer. She looked at Brad with a calm so flat it was frightening, then nodded. "Understood, sir." Brad nodded, satisfied. "Good. Work hard and maybe the company will keep you longer." He turned back to his guests, smiling in triumph. "Please, gentlemen, let's head into the next room. Let her work." When the door closed, Olivia remained where she was. Not from shock, but to contain a low fire of anger that threatened to flare. The hand holding the rag trembled slightly. She looked down at the polished floor, reflective enough to show her face. In it, she didn't see someone humiliated. She saw someone witnessing living proof of rot. She set her phone on the vanity and switched on the recorder. Her steady voice filled the empty space. Internal observation, log 237 in the afternoon. Recording evidence of insult and abuse of authority. Then she picked up the rag and began to scrub. Each motion was no longer housekeeping. It was the act of a strategist, clearing the invisible grime that coated an entire system. From behind the conference room door, voices came through clearly. "As I said," Brad began, "we've prepared a contingency plan. If the new CAO is someone who is not a cultural fit, my team can control every change," a guest asked. "You mean keep the existing machinery in place, even through restructuring?" "Exactly," Brad replied with a small laugh. "We have ways to make newcomers adapt. Those who do not fit will leave on their own." Olivia kept recording her heartbeat, slow but strong. She heard papers shuffle. Then Brad continued, "We call it Operation Continuity. And do not worry, diversity regulations are just procedures. We can still remove those who are not suitable if necessary." The word remove fell like the stroke of a blade. Olivia closed her eyes and inhaled deeply. Inside, her anger was changing into something else, a cold, precise clarity. If you want to change a system, you must first see how it runs itself in the dark. 30 minutes later, chairs scraped, and the guests exited the room. Brad was still smiling as he patted the oldest man's shoulder. Rest assured, Summit always protects its identity. Identity, Olivia thought, how ironic. She picked up her phone, stopped the recording, and saved the file under the name 14_37_ Whitaker _meeting evidence. Then she washed her hands and smoothed her hair in the mirror. The woman in the reflection smiled, but her eyes burned with a different light, the light of someone who knew she had seized the initiative. Stepping out of the restroom, Olivia nearly ran into Richard Dean, the head of security. He looked at her, frowning. "What are you doing on this floor?" "No one authorized you. I was told to clean," Olivia answered softly. "By whom, Mr. Whitaker?" Richard muttered. "He is at it again." The careless shrug told Olivia this was nothing unusual. The entire system had grown comfortable with power, expressed by putting others down. "You should go back downstairs. The new CIO is about to arrive." Olivia smiled faintly. "I know. I am waiting." As Richard left, she walked the corridor. Through each glass panel, she caught small vignettes of bias. A female employee handed a report to her manager and was cut off mid-sentence. A young engineer tried to present an idea and was brushed aside with, "You do not understand the company culture." A person of color in logistics was told to use the back route for convenience. Olivia slowed, letting each image etch into memory. Every act, every glance was a brick in the invisible wall that blocked fairness. She opened her notes app and typed, "Summit's problem is not just policy, it is mindset. Change must begin at the root." In the late afternoon, Texas light poured through the glass walls, laying long bands across the white stone floor. Olivia watched the city turn gold. Her shadow stretched across the tile, merging with the shadows of employees hustling to welcome the new CEO. She heard voices behind her. "I heard the CEO this time is a woman. Wonder if she can last." Another laughed. "All she needs to do is listen to the people below. Around here, Whitaker already has everything handled." Whitaker. That name sounded like a wrong note in the symphony of power. Olivia turned back into the restroom, the place where she had been humiliated that morning. She set her bag down, reopened the audio, and listened to the entire exchange. Brad's voice rang out, proud and distinct. "People like her do not fit this culture." Olivia tapped pause. A slow smile appeared. "Good," she whispered. "This will be their first lesson in what culture really means." She uploaded the recording to the cloud and marked it Confidential Evidence Level 1. Then she texted attorney Lauren Park. "Be ready to trigger legal protocols if necessary." "I am gathering field evidence," Lauren replied immediately. "Understood. You are doing what the whole system needs to see. But be careful, Olivia. Do not let them know who you are." "Do not worry," Olivia answered. "It will be a long time before they realize who is mopping their floors for them." Before leaving the executive floor, she paused before the nameplate outside Brad's office, Bradley Whitaker, Director of Operations. She snapped a photo and added a note, central figure of toxic culture. Then she walked away, each quiet step, beating like a drum, announcing a storm in formation. It would not sweep away just one man. It would transfuse an entire system. As the elevator door slid shut, Olivia caught her reflection in the steel, deep brown eyes, calm yet cold as water before a storm. She murmured, "Tomorrow you will command no one to kneel again, Brad." The doors sealed, and the world of Summit Dynamics had just lost control without realizing it. As the elevator doors closed, Olivia Grant shut her eyes. The confined space filled only with the steady hum of machinery, the cold air from the vents flowing over her skin like a stream of icy water washing through her mind. She opened her eyes. In the reflection, the woman in the simple suit stared back at her, and her gaze was no longer that of someone humiliated, but of someone preparing to act. Stepping out onto the 15th floor, the temporary operations area for the transition board, she locked herself inside an empty office, set her bag on the desk, and opened her laptop. The screen lit up, illuminating her face, calm and sharp, but her eyes blazed with intensity. She plugged in her headset and placed a secure call to Lauren Park, the corporate counsel of the parent company in New York. Lauren Olivia said directly, her voice low, but resolute, activate protocol, Jensen. There was a pause on the other end. "Are you sure?" Lauren asked. "We've only been in control for less than 48 hours. "I'm sure," Olivia replied, opening an audio file and pressing play. Brad's voice rang out. "If the new CEO is a diversity hire, we'll control every change." Lauren was silent for a moment. Then her tone hardened. "Understood. I'll assemble the legal team immediately. We need to document every piece of evidence before we move." "Exactly," Olivia said, her eyes fixed on the screen. "And prepare every file related to discrimination, unlawful termination, and internal policy violations. I want everything ready within 24 hours. "Got it. Where are you on site?" Olivia answered. "And I'm not leaving yet. There's more I need to see with my own eyes." Lauren exhaled softly. "All right. But be careful. A CEO going undercover inside a hornet's nest is not exactly standard procedure." Olivia smiled faintly. Sometimes you have to walk into the dark to see where the light truly comes from. When the call ended, Olivia dialed another number. "Ethan," she said, as a young man's voice came through, "prepare for the 4 o'clock board meeting. But before that, I need you to do 3 things." She spoke quickly, precise, without hesitation. "First, pull all employee records from the last 5 years, including performance reviews, termination reasons, and disciplinary actions. I want them categorized by gender, ethnicity, and position. Second, extract every contract related to the janitorial department, especially regarding wages, hours, and benefits. Third, contact Darius, the new head of HR, and have him prepare internal analytics on turnover rates." Ethan hesitated. "Olivia, what's going on? Are you investigating Summit at No?" Olivia replied, her voice like a cold blade. "I'm cleaning it." She reopened the photos from that morning, the outdated HR policy board, the wall lined with portraits of men, the segregated lunchroom tables. Each image was a fragment, forming the picture of a decaying culture. She typed notes, each line, sharp as a knife. HR policies, outdated by 3 years. Gender representation in leadership, 0% female, 0% people of color. Documented verbal abuse, multiple witnesses. Executive manipulation, operation continuity. These weren't just data points, they were ammunition, and she knew exactly how to fire them. On her second screen, the speech-to-text software finished transcribing Brad's recording. Olivia read every sentence, every period, as if dissecting the moral corpse of a man who called himself a leader. If the new CEO isn't a fit, we can create performance issues. They'll leave on their own. Diversity is just a political game. We'll preserve our identity. Each line made her grip tighten, but instead of anger, a smile curved her lips. "Perfect," she whispered. You just wrote your own indictment, Brad. Near 5 o'clock, the Texas sun sank lower, casting warm orange light over the glass towers. Olivia stood before the wide window, gazing down at the city turning gold. The light reflected across her face, half bright, half shadow, like two worlds colliding, the woman once dismissed, and the CEO now preparing to overturn an entire system. She picked up her phone and called Noah Simmons, the head of security, who had recognized her earlier that morning. "Noah," she said, "I need you to do something for me." "Yes, Ms. Grant. From now until I reveal my identity, no one can know I'm here. Let them believe the new CEO is still en route from New York. And keep your eyes open. I want to know immediately if anyone tries to hide evidence or alter records in the system." "Understood," Noah replied firmly. "I'll monitor everything quietly from the control room." "You can count on me." "I know," Olivia said softly. "You're one of the few people here who understands what the word dignity means." Returning to her desk, she opened her old profile, the one the media always cited as her journey from small meeting rooms to corporate leadership. She reread a line she once wrote herself. "Olivia Grant believes leadership doesn't begin with power, but with how people are treated when no one is watching." She smiled. This is the real test of that belief. The notification tone chimed. A new message from Lauren Park. "The full legal team is ready. I've sent you draft templates for filing if necessary. Maintain secrecy until we give the go-ahead." Olivia replied briefly. "Understood. Thank you, Lauren. Today they taught me a lesson about respect the worst way possible. Now it's my turn to teach them how a company truly operates." Before leaving the room, Olivia created a new folder on her computer titled Operation Reclaim. Inside, she added 4 initial files: evidence, audio, Brad Whittaker, cultural observation, notes, employee testimonies, legal preparation, protocol. She paused for a few seconds, staring at the 4 names. They weren't just files, they were the first spear points piercing through years of polished hypocrisy at Summit Dynamics. On her way out of the 15th floor, she stopped by the staff lounge. Maria Alvarez, the cleaning supervisor, was packing her things. "Ms. Grant," Maria said softly, still unaware of Olivia's true identity. "I've been moved to the night shift tomorrow. HR said someone complained that I talk too much." Olivia froze, her expression softening. "Maria," she said gently, "sometimes when we speak the truth, people try to silence us. But believe me, no one stays quiet forever." Maria nodded faintly, not fully understanding. "Thank you. You talk like a leader." Olivia smiled. "Maybe I am." Outside, as she walked toward the parking lot, the evening wind swept through her hair. She glanced down at her phone. Another message from Ethan. 5 years of data are being backed up. There are too many irregularities. Termination rates for employees of color are 4 times higher than average. I think you'll want to see this." Olivia gripped the phone tightly. "Yes, Ethan. I won't just see it. I'll make the whole world see it." The red glow of sunset reflected off the glass doors, lighting her face with determination. Beneath the skyline of Austin, coming alive with lights, Olivia walked on her small figure, moving steadily, every step the opening note of a symphony of justice. Tomorrow, Summit Dynamics would relearn the meaning of 2 words it had long forgotten: respect and responsibility. Morning light spilled through the glass walls, casting cold streaks across the stone floor. The conference room on the 12th floor, considered the brain of Summit Dynamics, was packed today. 12 mid-level managers sat around a walnut table, coffee steaming the air thick with worry and smugness. At the head of the table stood Brad Whittaker, hands clasped before him, wearing the stiff smile of a man performing leadership. "All right, everyone," he said, voice hoarse but precise. "I met with the advisory board last night. There is a rumor the new CEO is a woman, and if that is true, we need to prepare a response plan." The room rippled with whispers. Karen Doyle, Vice President of Human Resources, dropped a thick file onto the table. "I told you, Brad. Every time the company gets acquired, they parade a diversity face as a symbol. And the result, 6 months later, everything is chaos and we are the ones cleaning it up." Brad nodded in approval. "Exactly. Which is why we have to make sure Summit is not culturally reshaped. We have our own identity, and I am not about to let some outsider come in here and ruin it." Silence settled for a beat. A young manager, Lucas Bennett, frowned slightly. But what if the newcomer is truly competent? Maybe they want to improve the system. Brad turned, the smile gone. "Lucas," he said, lowering his voice until it cut, "you are still green. Around here, change is never improvement. It is risk." Behind the half-closed door stood the very woman they were discussing. Olivia Grant held her phone to the gap and hit record. She could hear every word, every pen click, every cup setting down on wood. Inside, Brad continued, "We will execute Operation Continuity, just like the previous plan. If the new CEO issues unsuitable directives, we stall. Every document must be reapproved through me. No one acts directly." Karen cut in, "I have prepared performance review templates. If anyone promoted or newly hired through diversity policies comes in, we can note that they fail to meet standards. Paper will speak for us." Dry, brittle laughter followed. Olivia stood still, her heartbeat slow and strong. Every word they spoke landed like a stone thrown into her belief in people. She knew this strategy well. It did not need slurs, only processes that sanitized discrimination. And this was precisely why Summit had to be reborn. "We do not need open resistance," Brad went on. "We just follow procedure on the surface, while keeping the real power in our hands. Anyone who does not understand our culture will remove themselves." Karen gave a thin smile. "I like how you say it. Culture as a natural filter." Olivia recorded everything, then quietly lifted her phone to take a few photos, printed handouts on the table template forms titled "Inappropriate Behavior Assessment," with a small note in the corner, "Language neutral, avoid references to race or gender." Neutral. She almost laughed without a sound. Neutral, but the entire purpose was to eliminate those who were not like them. Inside door, Lucas spoke again, cautious. "But if the CEO truly brings value, are we not blocking our own growth?" Brad faced him, heavy with authority. "You are young, Lucas. You will learn that stability matters more than change. Trust me, I have seen many like her. They enter with ideals and leave in tears," Karen added with a sneer. "Let us hope it is not the type who turns everything into a cultural revolution. I cannot stand another round of gender equality talks." Laughter burst sharp as shattering glass. Olivia bit her lip, her eyes still cold. She stepped back, glanced down at her phone screen, the audio waves blinking steadily. Good. Enough. She left the corridor and sent the entire audio file to Lauren Park with the note, "Evidence Level 2 Systemic Bias. Meeting 9:15 in the morning." Then she messaged Noah Simmons, "Preserve the 12th floor conference room security footage window, 9 to 9:45. Do not let anyone delete it." Noah replied immediately, "Understood. I will back it up to an independent drive." Reading the messages, Olivia felt a blend of sorrow and resolve rise within her. She was no longer angry, only determined, because anger makes people want revenge, while justice makes them want change. She returned to the empty office and opened her laptop. A string of messages from Ethan popped up. I ran a preliminary analysis. 74% of employees terminated over the last 5 years are from minority groups. 82% of senior managers share the same alma mater and hometown as Whittaker. Olivia closed her eyes and drew a breath. "I am not surprised," she typed back. "Build charts and highlight the numbers. We will present them in the afternoon meeting." She opened the Operation Reclaim folder and created a subdirectory Bias Framework Summit 2024. Inside, she entered the first lines. The system runs on fear of losing status, fear of losing privilege. But every fear dissolves when the light is turned on. 10 in the morning. The 12th floor hallway grew noisy. Rumors flew fast. "The new CEO is a woman. I heard she is a person of color." Olivia stood inside the elevator. Beige coat, quiet face. She listened to them talk about her as if she were a rumor, not a human being. Hope she is not too sensitive. I hate people who bring emotions into work. Yeah, I hear the parent company loves pageantry. Just let Whittaker handle everything. The doors opened. Olivia stepped out. The group fell silent. None of them knew that within a few hours the woman they had mocked would have the authority to fire them. She walked to the glass at the end of the corridor and looked down at the grand lobby. Below, employees were decorating the welcome area to greet the new CEO. Ribbons, name boards, fresh flowers, all dazzling and meaningless. She thought they are preparing for a staged ceremony while this house is rotting from within. She pulled out her phone and texted Lauren, "I have enough evidence to act. But I want one more thing, proof of their reaction when faced with the truth." Lauren replied, "What do you intend to do?" "Observe a little longer," Olivia wrote back. "I want to see how they treat me while they still think I am just a cleaner." At that moment, the alert chimed emergency meeting in 30 minutes. All mid-level managers and department heads report to conference room B. Brad had issued the summons. Olivia smiled and turned off her screen. In her mind, the morning's plan snapped into place. She would let them tighten the noose around their own necks, one by one. She stood, gathered her things. Before leaving, she glanced at the tired slogan on the wall, "Innovation through tradition." She murmured, low but clear, "Very well. Time to redefine tradition." The door closed behind her. Olivia's footsteps rang down the corridor, steady and unflinching, no longer the steps of someone mistaken for janitorial staff, but of a woman walking toward Judgment Day for an entire power structure. The 12th floor corridor glowed with white light, mirrored on the stone, like a still sheet of water, yet beneath that calm a swell was rising. Olivia Grant stepped out of the records room, where she had just sent a batch of recordings to Lauren Park, her phone still lit in her hand with the final file labeled Operation Continuity Complete. She lifted her chin and drew a steady breath. It was time to let the light slip through the first cracks. As her foot reached the corner of the hall, a bark came from behind. "You there, stop right now." Olivia turned. Brad Whittaker was striding toward her face, flushed tie, askew eyes blazing with anger. "What are you doing on this floor?" he nearly growled. "This is a restricted area. You are not authorized to be here." Olivia stayed composed, her voice light as air. "I am simply finishing what I was asked to do. You told me to clean this floor." The line stalled Brad for a half-second. Then he scoffed. "Do not play games. No one is allowed near the conference wing during work hours. Who do you think you are, to dare?" He thrust out his hand. voice snapping hand over your badge. I want to verify your identity now. Olivia looked at that outstretched hand, fingers trained by long practice in ordering people around. She slowly slipped her phone into her pocket and said, "I left my badge at reception." "Nonsense," Brad snapped. "No one is here without a badge. I am calling security." She did not move her face, unreadable. "Go ahead," she said. Brad dialed quickly, pitching his voice loud so the officers around them could hear Whitaker here, floor 12. "I have an unauthorized individual in the executive zone. Send the team immediately. Possible intrusion or espionage." A few heads popped out from nearby doors, watching as if it were a familiar film, the powerful posturing, while the powerless were shamed, not knowing the production had for the first time a real director standing center stage. In less than a minute, 2 security officers arrived. One of them, Noah Simmons, the man Olivia had called privately the previous night. Brad pointed his tone, hardening. This person was found near a secure meeting without a badge. I want all belongings checked, including phone and bag. Noah glanced at Olivia. Their eyes met for an instant, enough to say, "Stay calm, I am ready." "Yes, Mr. Whitaker," Noah said professionally, then turned to Olivia and spoke low so only they could hear. "I am sorry, Mom. I need to escort you to the security level for screening." Brad folded his arms, smirking. "Good." And note in the report that she resisted cooperation. Olivia met his gaze, her eyes as still as a lake. "I am not resisting," she said, quietly. "I am waiting for him to follow procedure." The line made Brad frown, that sense of control slipping from his grasp. The elevator slid down to the service levels, the space darker, the smell of metal and cleaner mixing in the air. Noah played the role of escort, but once the doors closed, he lowered his voice. They crossed the line. "I have a copy of this morning's security footage, including his meeting. Do you want me to send it straight to legal? Not yet," Olivia said, watching the numbers climb on the panel. "We are not at the last act." Noah studied her, a mix of respect and worry. I have never seen anyone this calm after being humiliated. Olivia smiled faintly. Calm is the one thing they cannot take from me. When they lose control, I win. The doors opened. In the basement, a few janitorial staff had gathered, heads dipping as security appeared. "What is going on?" a woman asked, eyes anxious. Noah gave a small signal. Olivia stepped forward, her voice softening. "It is all right. Just procedure." But as she looked around, a scene tightened her chest. A young employee was having her access card, taken confusion, written across her face. Another argued, "I have worked here 3 years, why call this a random check?" Now a guard answered orders from upstairs. Anyone not on the reconfirmation list is temporarily suspended. Olivia turned to Noah, his look confirming what she feared Brad was using, the moment to purge minority staff. She walked to the group. A thin woman with a badge that read, "Elena Rodriguez," spoke in a trembling voice. "They said our cards would be locked, said it was for security adjustments. But only people like us are getting checked." "What about the others?" Olivia asked. "The white employees just passed through." The answer cut like ice. Olivia pulled out her phone and began recording her voice, low but clear. "I am documenting service staff reports of discriminatory card checks. Recurrent pattern confirmed with systemic character." She offered Elena a steady smile. "I want to hear more. What has happened before?" Elena sighed. "Last month, 6 people were moved to night shift after complaining about cleaning chemicals. They said we lacked team spirit. One person was fired on the spot. Another added, 'They track our breaks. But office staff can step out to smoke as long as they want, and no one says anything. Each account fed the fire inside Olivia, yet her tone stayed even. Do not worry. Today every word you say will be heard at the highest level. Elena blinked, unsure. Highest level. Do you mean? Olivia only smiled. Trust me. Footsteps sounded down the hall. Brad and Karen Doyle appeared with 2 more guards. Brad frowned at the sight of Olivia still there. I thought you were being processed. Not finished, Noah said, keeping his voice neutral. I am verifying identity. No need, Brad snapped. I have verified it. She is a disruptive cleaner. Remove her from the building immediately. Karen pulled out an HR notebook and asked with bureaucratic stiffness, Your name so I can file the violation. Olivia did not answer. Did you not hear me? Karen hissed. Provide your employee number, or I will consider this non-compliance. Elena looked at Olivia worried, but Olivia remained calm, her hand lightly gripping the phone in her pocket. You will have my number, she said slowly, but perhaps in a moment when I introduce myself to the entire company. Brad burst out laughing, a note of mockery in his voice. What are you trying to pull a cleaner making an announcement to the company ridiculous? Olivia did not reply. A chime sounded. The elevator doors opened. Out stepped Ethan Brooks, Lauren Park, and 2 members of the new executive team carrying folders. The air shifted at once. Every gaze swung towards them. Lauren scanned the room, her eyes winter cold. What is happening here? Brad stammered. It is just an unidentified worker. I was having her handled. Olivia cut in her voice, calm but ringing like metal. No need to handle anything, Mr. Whittaker. She drew a badge from her jacket and held it high. Light flashed across the raised letters, Olivia Grant, Chief Executive Officer. The corridor fell silent. Brad's eyes froze, his hand still stuck in midair as if turned to stone. Karen's notebook slipped from her fingers, and pages fluttered across the floor. Elena lifted a hand to her mouth. The maintenance crew stared at one another with wide, astonished eyes. Olivia took a single step toward Brad, her voice low, yet carrying each word. You were right about one thing. Whittaker here. Culture is a filter. And today, it just filtered you out. No one could breathe. The storm Olivia had carried finally touched ground, and Summit Dynamics, the place that thought it could hide rot behind glass, and red carpet, would now be forced to see itself under the true light. The moment the CEO badge glinted under the fluorescent lights, the entire space seemed to stop breathing, every sound swallowed, leaving only the racing heartbeats of those standing there to pulse through the heavy air. On the silver card, the capital letters were carved clean and sharp. Olivia Grant, Chief Executive Officer, Summit Dynamics. Brad Whittaker blinked rapidly, his face turning to stone, his hand still suspended in midair, as if reaching for the last shred of authority, dissolving right before him. Karen Doyle froze her HR notebook, slipping from her grasp papers, scattering across the floor like masks falling from a false face. To this Brad stammered his voice. Gravelly must be a mistake. Olivia regarded him, her voice low, and so cold that no one dared interrupt. You are right, there is a mistake. But it did not come from me. She stepped forward to face him, her eyes not angry, only as still as a lake that reflects the entire truth. Mr. Whittaker, she said each word, precise. You humiliated an employee you assumed was custodial staff. You ordered badges confiscated and launched an investigation into a suspicious individual without evidence. You degraded, threatened, and discriminated. And most serious of all, you attempted to run this company as if it were your private property. Brad swallowed and looked away. If I had known you were the CEO, Exactly, Olivia cut in. If you had known I was the CEO, you would not have done it. That is the problem. Your respect is tied to a title, not to a human being. A ripple passed through the maintenance team standing behind her. Maria Alvarez gripped Elena's hand, eyes brimming. Near the elevator, Noah exhaled a slight smile at the corner of his mouth, like a release. Karen tried to recover her composure, her voice unsteady. Ms. Grant, we were simply following proper security procedures during a transition period. It was really a misunderstanding. Olivia turned to her and cut her off. Misunderstanding does not turn people into abusers, Miss Doyle. What I see here is not confusion. It is a culture afraid of losing power, and today that culture ends. The elevator doors opened again. 5 people stepped out: Ethan Brooks, Lauren Park, Angela Patel, Jason Cole, and Darius Washington, all in clean professional attire and steady of face. They needed no introductions. Their presence alone was enough for Brad to grasp that the entire board had shifted. Olivia turned her voice calm, but ringing like an order. Mr. Whittaker, Ms. Doyle, listen carefully. From this moment, your operational authority is suspended pending the outcome of an internal investigation. Brad drew a breath and tried to sound controlled. You cannot do that without a board decision. Olivia tilted a brief smile and took a folder from her jacket, holding it up Summit's logo, stamped on the pages, alongside the signatures of all shareholders. I can, and I just did. Silence fell. Even the hum of the air conditioning seemed to halt. Lauren stepped forward firm and clear. This is an official directive. Under Clause 4.7 of the Corporate Charter, the CIO has full authority to suspend personnel when there is evidence of a toxic work environment or violations of corporate ethics. We have sufficient evidence. Brad paled. What evidence? Lauren opened her laptop and played the recording. If the new CEO is a diversity hire, we will control every change. Brad's voice filled the corridor, unmistakable. The air thickened. A few nearby employees held their breath. Brad forced a laugh, his voice breaking. That was just an internal joke. Lauren snapped the laptop shut, her tone colder than steel. Justice has no section for just kidding. Olivia turned to the maintenance staff. Thank you for your patience, she said gently. You may return to your work. All access that was revoked this morning will be restored immediately. Any delay or retaliation will be addressed. Maria bowed her head. Tears falling through her voice stayed steady. Thank you, Miss Grant. You showed us that not everyone in a suit stands for justice. Olivia smiled. Thank you, Maria. Justice does not come from a suit or a title. It comes from the courage to face what is wrong, no matter how small. She looked back at Brad and Karen. Now, she said slowly, you will go with security to surrender your badges, devices, and data. Legal will contact you to proceed with the investigation. Brad's voice tightened. You think you can destroy my reputation over a few recordings? I have given this company 20 years. Olivia stepped closer and met his eyes. No one destroyed you, Mr. Whittaker. You did that yourself. I only turned on the light so others could see. There were no words left to save him. Brad lowered his head and walked away heavily, 2 guards falling in behind. Karen tried to keep her composure, but her hands shook so badly she could not close her briefcase. As the elevator doors slid shut, Lauren turned to Olivia and murmured, You know, many people dream of this moment, and you turned it into a manifesto. Olivia's smile was brief. I did not come to take revenge. I came to rebuild what is right. She She turned to Ethan. Prepare an all-hands meeting in 30 minutes conference level. Every department, including service staff. I want them to hear the whole story from the person who lived it. Ethan nodded. Understood. When the others dispersed, Olivia remained alone in the corridor. She stood still, watching her reflection in the floor. What she felt was not triumph, but weight, as if she had just brushed thick dust from a priceless statue. At the summit there is always a cold wind, and she knew this was only the beginning of a long campaign. She stepped into the elevator and pressed the button for the conference level. The doors closed, and in that pocket of quiet, she allowed herself a deep breath. She remembered the first morning she arrived when they shoved a mop into her hands and told her to scrub the floors. Now she was scrubbing something else, the filth of power and prejudice. When the elevator stopped, Ethan was waiting with a wireless microphone. "The room is full, ma'am," he said. "Everyone is waiting." Olivia nodded and entered the hall. Hundreds of eyes fixed on her, some puzzled, some admiring, some afraid. She walked to the podium, the lights catching the deep brown of her steady eyes. "Good morning," she began, calm but carrying. "I am Olivia Grant, and from today I formally assume the role of Chief Executive Officer of Summit Dynamics." Murmurs rose, but Olivia lifted a hand. No need to raise her voice. "I know many of you are surprised this morning, and perhaps some of you are afraid. I am not here to cost anyone their job. I am here to bring justice back." She paused and surveyed the room. "I do not need a welcome. I need action. And my first action begins today, right here." Her gaze burned bright. The fight to reclaim the soul of Summit Dynamics had officially begun. The grand conference hall of Summit Dynamics was filled to capacity. Hundreds of employees crowded along the walls, the silence so deep they could hear the faint hum of the projector coming to life. No one fully understood what had just unfolded in the hallway outside. They only knew that the executive board had called for an emergency meeting, and that the new CEO, someone no one had yet seen, would be speaking on her very first day. The doors opened. Olivia Grant entered, walking straight, unhurried, yet the atmosphere shifted the instant she appeared. Behind her were Lauren Park, Ethan Brooks, Angela Patel, and Darius Washington. Their faces were composed, serious, stripped of the usual polite smiles seen at leadership introductions. Olivia stopped at the center of the room, set the microphone on the podium, and the light caught the CEO badge gleaming on her chest. "Good morning." Her voice was low, clear, and carried effortlessly across the hall, even without the mic. "My name is Olivia Grant, and as of today, I officially assume the position of Chief Executive Officer at Summit Dynamics." A wave of whispers rippled through the room, sharp intakes of breath, the creak of chairs, soft murmurs. "It's her, the cleaning lady from this morning," Olivia let them whisper before continuing. "This morning, I had the chance to observe the true culture of this company, not from reports, but from how people treat one another." She paused, her gaze sweeping across the crowd. "Some treated me with respect because they didn't need to know who I was, but others chose contempt, barking orders, throwing insults because they believed I was someone unworthy of being heard. In doing so, they revealed the very system they've been protecting. The air seemed drained of oxygen." Behind her, Lauren Park pressed play. On the large screen, Brad Whitaker's voice echoed through the room. "If the new CEO is a diversity hire, we'll control every change. Those who don't fit the culture will disappear on their own." The audience stirred, then fell silent again as Lauren stopped the playback. Olivia looked around. Those words were spoken this morning, right here on this floor. And they're not just the words of one person. They're proof of how power has been used, not to lead, but to exclude. She pressed another button. A chart appeared showing termination rates, pay disparities by race and gender. The glaring red numbers made several people lower their eyes. "This is Summit's real data from the past 5 years," Olivia said, her tone steady yet forceful. "No tech company can call itself innovative while remaining divided like this. We cannot claim progress if we keep the same old prejudice." A young manager stood up. It was Lucas Bennett, the one who had questioned Brad earlier. "Ms. Grant, if we want to change, what can we do?" Olivia looked at him, a faint smile crossing her lips. "Start with how we see others. And stop waiting for permission. I am giving you the authority to act." She turned back to the screen. "Starting today, I'm announcing 5 immediate reforms." Her voice carried firmly. "First, a zero-tolerance policy toward all forms of discrimination or verbal abuse. There will be no second warning. Second, an anonymous reporting system independent of management, ensuring every voice can be heard. Third, a full audit of pay bonuses and promotions over the last 5 years. Fourth, a restructuring of our hiring process to prioritize skill over background. And finally, I am inviting representatives from the front lines, those who truly understand this company's reality, to serve directly on the new Culture Committee." Her eyes moved toward the back row, where Maria Alvarez and Elena Rodriguez stood, frozen still, unsure if they had heard correctly. Ms. Maria Alvarez Olivia called, "I would like you to serve as our Director of Workplace Environment. I need someone who has lived and endured this system to help me change it." The room erupted in applause, not thunderous but slow and sincere, spreading like a wave of warmth that broke the heavy stillness. Olivia set down the microphone, her voice softening. "We cannot rewrite the past, but we can choose how the future will be told. And I want Summit to be the kind of story your children speak of, with pride, not avoidance." She looked across the hall one last time. "I will not promise this journey will be easy. But I promise that in this company, no one will ever have to kneel to be respected again." A long silence followed. Then the entire hall rose, applause swelling and echoing off the walls. Amid that sound, Olivia drew a deep breath. She did not feel like a victor, only like someone beginning anew. And on that morning, Summit Dynamics was born again. The Texas morning sun streamed through the glass walls of Summit Dynamics' top floor, casting a golden glow across the open space. The old partitions were gone. The corner office that once belonged only to executives was now a shared workspace where the CEO sat beside engineers and maintenance staff. The sounds of typing and laughter mingled together, light yet full of energy. Maria Alvarez, now the Director of Workplace Environment, was presenting her report. Productivity is up 27%, turnover has dropped by nearly half, and job applications from underrepresented groups have tripled. Olivia nodded, her smile gentle, but her eyes filled with quiet pride. Those numbers don't just speak of profit. They tell the story of human value when people are treated right. On the screen hanging in the center of the room, a news ticker scrolled across Summit Dynamics Cultural Transformation, model honored at the Global Business Ethics Conference. Ethan walked over, half teasing, half sincere. Now the entire industry wants to follow our lead. Doesn't that feel good? Olivia shook her head lightly. No. Justice isn't something to flaunt, it's something to share. She stood and walked down the hallway as the morning breeze flowed in. The portraits of executives had been replaced with group photos, faces of every color, every gender smiling together. In that moment, she saw herself again, on her first day, the woman standing in a restroom, humiliated, holding a mop, but still standing tall. Olivia stopped before the large window overlooking the city. The light reflected her face, calm, steady, and radiant, with the strength of someone who had walked through the storm, yet never lost faith. "No one should have to kneel to be respected," she whispered. Behind her, the laughter of employees echoed the sound of a new culture reborn. And in that bright morning, Summit Dynamics was no longer just a company that had been saved, but proof that when dignity is protected, a workplace can become a community. From the perspective of a leadership ethics expert, Olivia Grant's journey was not merely a clash between power and prejudice, but proof that true corporate culture is not built on slogans. It is built on how people treat one another when no one is watching. She turned humiliation into a tool for transformation and silence into a declaration of dignity. If you believe that respect should never depend on a title, then, like this video, to share that message, subscribe to the channel to follow more stories where humanity is tested by power, and comment below with a phrase that reflects your belief in the value of every human being. Hold your dignity.